Hello, learners. I hope that we are all well. So, welcome to our segment today. I am Instructor CPA Ringo Frederick. Today, I want us to handle a very interesting part in our financial management. And the concept that we'll be looking at is, of course, the aspect of valuation of ordinary shares. And remember, this financial management that we're handling, it isn't only for students who are doing CPA. These are concepts that covers all areas of any course that has financial management. This concept is always very important. So today's segment, we're looking at valuation of ordinary shares, and the main concept that I want us to look at here majorly is about Gordon's valuation, Gordon's growth valuation model, Gordon's growth valuation model, or of course method. These are methods that we normally tend to use a lot when we are talking about valuation of ordinary shares. So just to take you back on what we did, remember we mentioned that anytime we'll be talking about the concept of valuation, in this case, we normally tend to look at, other than the company, first of all, we normally consider three forms of securities. These are, of course, debentures or simply bonds. We normally consider preference shares, and we normally consider the aspect to do with ordinary shares. So these are the three key securities that we normally consider. So far, I think we've analyzed clearly the two concepts, and also today's session then I want us to consider the aspect of now the ordinary shares, which is always very key. So to do this question, of course, we will be looking at a question from our past paper, and that is the question that we'll be looking at because the focus today, it is on one concept under Gordon's valuation model, whereby if at all you can recall, when we are looking at Gordon's valuation model, we say that at this point we'll be looking at companies being divided into three. We normally consider non-growth firm. We normally tend to talk about non-growth firm. Number two, we normally tend to talk about, of course, the normal growth firm. Normal growth firm. And three, we normally tend to talk about supernormal growth firm. Supernormal growth firm. So these are the three firms that we normally consider under Gordon's growth valuation model. And at this point today, I want us to consider about the supernormal growth firm. That is the focus that we'll be looking at today. And as you can see, just on should be the top left corner. We have an offer for you guys. All of us, we are celebrating love. So long as you are healthy, so long as of course, so long as you're healthy, that's a major thing actually. So long as you're healthy, you should celebrate love, right? And that's why we are sharing this love with you guys. And if at all you can check what I've displayed there, literally we have an offer for you guys. Yeah, 25% of amazing offer of 25% for every course that you're taking with MDRASA. The deadline is this weekend. So if at all you need to enjoy this offer, make sure that whichever course that you're taking with MDRASA, we have so many courses that you can take with us. Of course, for accounts, for Power Business Intelligence, for tax, for QuickBooks, Advanced Excel. So long as you're taking any course with us, then there is offer for you of 25% off. Take advantage of that, okay? Of course, you can always reach us out on the number indicated for you to earn that offer. Okay, that is offer is for this Valentine's to celebrate love with you guys. So, talking matters with love. Let also Mwalimu share with us the love of our financial management, and that's why we'll be looking at this important concept here, which was tested, of course, in 2022. If at all you can check that question in August, that should be question in August 2022, August 2022, and that should be question number 5, part C. August 2022, question number 5, part C. Mwalimu has shared with us that question at that point. If at all you can go through this question together, these are what, of course, the good examiner told us, that we have this company. This company was known as Koki Limited, recently paid a dividends of 2.50 per share. The dividends is expected to grow at a rate of 15% per annum for the first 3 years, then at the rate of 10% per annum for the next 2 years, after which the dividends will grow at a rate of 5% per annum to perpetuity. The required rate of return for the ordinary share is 12%. Required, the good examiner wanted us to determine the intrinsic value of ordinary shares of Koki Limited. So once you've seen that, whatever should come at your face is simply a smile, right? Because when you say about the smile, because you'll find that once you master the key concept, this will always be very easy. And I want us to prove it right now. So all times, my good students, anytime you're dealing with, of course, the supernormal growth form, because that is what you're looking at. Anytime we are dealing with a supernormal growth form, yeah, whatever that you need to understand for supernormal growth form is that at any given point in time, if at all you are to determine the intrinsic value of these ordinary shares, you must take into consideration that your value will be taken by considering the present value of the expected dividends, present value of the expected dividends up to the point of stabilization. Yeah, up to the point of stabilization, okay? And we are going to add this with the present value of the shares, immediately after stabilization, So these are the key concepts that you must always tend to have, whereby you can see we are talking about the present value of the expected dividends, and we are looking at the present value of the shares. These are one thing that you need to be very good at, because if at all you can recall what Mwalimu shared with us, when you are looking at the present value of the, or rather the expected dividends, anytime you talk about expected dividends, which is D1, we'll always take DO into 1 plus G. That one will always give us what? That one will always give us, of course, that will always give us the concept of, the expected dividends. When you are looking at the present value of the shares, now PO, and remember, immediately after stabilization, the growth rate will be constant all through. So if the growth rate will be constant all through, for us to determine that, you must take, therefore, our DO into 1 plus G. Recall, we'll take the cost of equity with less our growth rate. So this is how to determine the value, of course, of the shares market value, and this is how to determine the expected dividends. And what will be the distinguishing factor of the supernormal growth firm? Supernormal growth firm, the factor or the main distinguishing factor will be, this is a scenario or a firm whereby on the initial stages, the dividends will be growing at a very high rate. As the time goes by, the dividends growth rate will be declining. It will reach a point whereby it will decline to the point that it will remain stable to perpetuity, to a period that we don't know. And once you've looked at that question, you can clearly see that it depicts these characteristics. So therefore, at this point, the first thing that we need to, of course, identify anytime you're handling such questions is, are you able to identify the concept of supernormal? See, look at this case. Looking at our question, all of us, I believe, we can see that part of the question. We're told that I'm having this farm, which in this case, we're given that recently it has paid a dividends of 2.5 shillings. So literally, our DO in this case, we're given a value of 2.5. Then what the examiner told us is that the dividends is expected to grow at a rate of 15% per annum for the first 3 years. So year 1, year 2, year 3, these dividends would be growing at the rate of 15%. Then we are told, then at the rate of 10% for the next 2 years. Then at the rate of 10% in the next 2 years, so that is 4 and 5. Yeah, growing at the rate of 10%. And what will happen again? We are told that while after which the dividends will grow at a rate of 5% to perpetuity. So year 6 all the way to infinity, then we're told that the dividends will be growing at the rate of 5%. A good examiner was very good. He had given us cost of equity of 12%. See? So once you're given all those details, there's nothing else that you need, by the way. Once you are given all the details as indicated at that point, there's nothing else that you require other than for you to analyze it clearly. So therefore, our task could be for us to consider, of course, the period given, which is our years. So I'll be having year 1. So I'll be having year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, up to year 5. We need to determine, first of all, the expected dividends. And you know very well that the expected dividends, the one, we have to consider the O of 1 plus G. And how will we determine that? The dividends that we just paid currently is 2.50, right? So we agree that my D1 in year 1, I should be having 2.50 into 1 plus the growth rate, year 1 to 3, we had 15%, so 0.15, 1 plus 0.15, 1 plus 0.15. So these are what you should be having. So the first case, because the DO in year 2 will be whatever that we're going to determine in year 1. So therefore, we must determine our growth for year 1, which will give us what? 2.50 times, of course, 1.15, which in this case is giving us 2.875. That is what Mwalimu is getting. 2.875, which that is what we are going to take here, 2.875 times, of course, 1.15, which will give us 3.31. We can take 2 decimal places. So here we take the other one, you can take, this one is 8, right? We take 2.88. So that is what I'm going to have here, 3.31. So talk about times 1.15. This should give us 3.80. See, we are determining our D1. So year 4, 5, we can see that it declined. The growth rate declined to 10%. So 0.10, 1 plus 0.10. Yeah, 0.1, that is the case. So that in this context, then, my good students, year 4 will be having 3.80 by 1.1, which would give us 4.18. We have 4.18 by 1.1, which would give us 4.60. You see? So that is what we have in terms of our dividends. In terms of our dividends, we can see that our dividends, in this case, they are irregular. And we need to determine the present value. Where we are talking of irregular cash flows, of course, the present value will always be on a lump sum factor. So my lump sum factor here should be present value interest factor. We have our present value interest factor given our rate, which is 12%, a number of years there. So that is to say, at this point, we are going to determine this factor. Remember, present value interest factor, we normally consider, given our rate, a number of years, 1 plus r raised to power negative n. That is what you normally consider. And that is what you're going to apply at this point. That's what you're going to apply at that point. Yeah? So how will we go about it? How will we go about it? To go about it, then we should take the shortcut that Mwalimu guided us. By now, you should be very good on the shortcut. We determine for year one only, where we have 1.12 raised to power negative 1, which would give us, into 4 decimal places, 0.8929. The next year, I'm going to divide by 1.12, 1 plus r, that is a case, to give us 0.7972. After that, what we'll be doing, we'll just be tapping. You tap 0.7118. You tap 0.6355. You tap 0.5674. You see, we determine our interest factor. So once we have our interest factor, it will be easy for us now to determine our present value, which in that case, our present value will be taking our expected dividends times the factor. That will give us our PV. Then the next stage would be for us to determine the present value of the shares immediately after stabilization. Immediately after stabilization, we are looking at sixth year, right? So incorporating our value of shares, our DO in 6, we should be talking of what? 4.60. That will be your DO in year 6, or rather in year 6. DO. In this case, into 1 plus growth rate. What is our growth rate in year 6 to infinity? We are given 5%. So we take, of course, 0.05. All of this into our cost of equity, KE, we are given 12%. So 0.12 times, of course, or not times, but less our G, which is 0.05. At this point, I need to determine my present value. So we have to multiply by the factor. And the factor that we are going to consider here was the factor on immediately on stabilization, which was what? Our factor here, we had 0.5674. See, this was our factor, what we are determining at that point. So my good students, at this point, this will make our work much easier. And this one, Mwalimu is not going to do for us. Mwalimu is not going to do for us. I want you to do for yourself. Yeah? So that in this case, whatever that you're going to have here, you multiply your D1 times your factor all the way to this point, you solve this. So whatever value that you're going to get here, whatever value that you're going to get at that point, that is what we'll be taking it as what? The present, or rather the aspect of what you're given here, the concept of what? The PO, intrinsic value of these shares, or rather of this, the intrinsic value, right? After or for a super normal growth firm. Just the way the good examiner had asked us to determine. This was, of course, I can remove this bit, yeah. These are what you asked, the intrinsic value of the ordinary shares of Koki Limited, where we are looking at it This being what? Being a supernormal growth firm. Being a supernormal growth firm. So this is what you need to determine. That is a gift of Mwalimu to you guys, financial management, right? Make sure that at least these concepts are always very easy. If at all you approach them with an open mind. And as I've always mentioned, guys, we are here for you. We are here for you. We are here to assist you, of course, to understand the whole of these concepts. So make sure you take advantage of this offer. And as I've said, it is only for the weekend, Valentine's weekend, right? Very nice offer. Very nice offer. 25% off in all the courses that you are taking with us. So, at this point, I wish you, of course, happy Valentine's. You enjoy with your loved ones, and see you in our next sessions. Bye bye.